Hi everyone, welcome along. Great to have so much energy in the room, great to see such a packed room. Welcome along to Race Against Climate Change Live, hosted by Envision Racing in partnership with New Scientists and the UK government here at the Science Museum in London. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Garrido. I'm a presenter for Sky Sports News, where I also lead on climate and sustainability. Thank you to you all for attending, and to those joining virtually as well. Thanks for being here, and thanks in advance to our stellar panel of speakers and moderators. And finally, I'd also like to thank our event partners for today, New Scientists and the UK government, and all of our fantastic team partners and sponsors for their support and collaboration. So that is Algorand, Teijin, DX, EVM, Palo Alto Networks, New Scientists, Pulsar, Helium, CP Company, and OMP. Quite simply, without them, none of this would be possible. We heard from Lee McDonough downstairs, and just to sort of continue the theme of what Lee was saying, just a few months ago, the World Meteorological Organization reported that we are now likely to breach the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate threshold by 2027, in 4 years' time. Add in the record heat waves, the extreme weather events of this summer, it is absolutely crystal clear that collective and urgent action to address the climate emergency is needed more than ever before. Despite those alarming developments, every day thousands of actions, small and large, are being taken across the world by people, by businesses, by organisations, by governments who understand the dire consequences of climate change, and they are inspired to do something about it. So over the next few hours, we're going to be hearing about some of the steps being taken towards creating a more sustainable future for our planet, in particular, the role of electric vehicles in transitioning to this future. And that is in no small part down to Formula E, who showcase EVs to a global audience, and, well, this weekend's London E-Prix, where, remember, Envision Racing are in the mix for both drivers and teams' titles, is worth saying. They can really help highlight what electric vehicles are truly capable of and what the future of mobility really looks like. Before we start in earnest, just the tiniest bit of housekeeping. I'll keep this brief. If you're looking for the toilets, back of the hall, down the spiral staircase. There are no plans for a fire alarm, so if you do hear one, please make your way to the emergency exits, and we'll take you to the assembly point guided on by the Science Museum staff here on hand. Please do share on social media about what we're seeing here today. The hashtag to use is RACC Live, so RACC Live, obviously Race Against Climate Change Live. So let's kick off our programme, shall we, by welcoming to the stage a true, undoubted voice of authority in this field, a Professor of Climate Science at University of Reading, Professor Ed Hawkins. Now, Professor Hawkins' research examines how and why the climate has changed since the Industrial Revolution, and indeed, and perhaps more crucially, how it could change over the coming decades. And it's visualised in the famous climate stripes showing the Earth warming from blue through white to red. They've appeared everywhere. They've appeared on catwalks. They've appeared, on buildings. They've appeared on the White Cliffs of Dover. They've appeared on Reading FC's kits in the last season. And Professor Hawkins also leads Weather Rescue. It's a citizen science project involving thousands of volunteers. I love this. It's basically involves recovering millions of lost Victorian-era weather observations from handwritten archives and then turn them into invaluable digital data. It's really quite remarkable. Let's hear more. Ladies and gents, please welcome to the stage Professor Ed Hawkins.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you very much. So it's great to be here, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. The world is warming. It's warmed by about 1.2 degrees Celsius over the last 170 years or so, and that is down to our actions, mainly burning fossil fuels and deforestation. And that simple fact is very starkly and visually highlighted in this graphic we see on the screen. 173 stripes, representing the change in global temperatures from 1850 on the left to 2022 on the right. One stripe per year, with the colour of the stripe indicating the global temperature in that year. It is a simple, stark visual highlighting our warming world, and has been used everywhere, as David just described. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what this means and what our choices and actions might be. But the very simple message from the science is that global warming will continue until we reach net zero emissions. That's the only thing that will stop global warming, reaching net zero emissions. And what does net zero mean? It means cutting our carbon dioxide emissions drastically and radically and rapidly. But some of our emissions are actually quite hard to stop. And so we are also going to need to work out a way of extracting carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and burying it underground permanently. And we don't really have a very effective way to do that at scale yet. So it's important. The net means that, yes, we need to reduce our emissions, but we're also going to need to bury some of it underground as well. And that is the only way we can stop global warming. But also, that's the global picture. And what's important to realise, of course, is that that means that everywhere is warming. Every country is warming, every region is warming, every city is warming around the world. And these stripes are for one particular location. I've chosen the island of Rhodes in Greece for probably obvious reasons. These graphics are available for many locations around the world, and you can download them and use them. But this particular example is for Rhodes. And again, you can see very simply, visually and clearly that Rhodes has warmed up over the last 170 years. There's more variation from year to year because it's a small island and you get variable weather from year to year. But the overall trend is undeniable and stark and clear. Rhodes has warmed up. And that part of the world is also getting drier in summer because of climate change, which means it's hotter and drier, meaning that the conditions for wildfires become better. And we've all seen the pictures on the news recently of what's been happening on Rhodes and across the Mediterranean, in places like Tunisia and Portugal and Italy, as well as seeing enormous wildfires and record-breaking heat waves. And because the only way to stop global warming is to reach net zero emissions, the only way we can stop these consequences getting worse is also to reach net zero. The consequences will get worse until we get to net zero emissions. Heat waves will become hotter. The conditions for wildfires will become more frequent, more prevalent until we reach net zero. And we'll also see heavier downpours, heavier rainfall events, as we've seen in other regions across the world. And those rainfall events will get heavier and heavier until we reach net zero. So we're also going to need to learn to adapt to the new climate that we're going to live in. We're going to need to learn to somehow deal with heavier rainfall events, hotter heat waves, and to deal with wildfires and other consequences that we've heard so much about. And so we face some choices now as a global community. We can take very, very rapid action to reduce our emissions and reach net zero by the 2050s, and we might have a chance of keeping within the 1.5 degrees C limit that's been proposed during the Paris Agreement and every government in the world has signed up to. We might have to overshoot it and come back down. But every delay in our action, every non-action we take means that we end up in a hotter world. So delayed action means we could end up in a 3-degree world, and we do not want to go there. But it's also important to note there are no blue stripes in our future. When we reach net zero, we will have to live with the consequences of that warmer world for generations. Temperatures will not decline. They will stay hot and live in that warmer climate for generations. So the consequences that are getting worse, we lock in those consequences getting worse until we reach net zero. That's why net zero is so important. So every action matters. Every ton of carbon dioxide we don't emit matters. It makes a difference to our future. It would be nice if this very clear scientific evidence gathered over decades by tens of thousands of climate scientists meant that the policymakers were taking very rapid actions. They are taking some actions, but not rapid enough to meet the targets that they have set themselves and the international community has set themselves with the Paris Agreement. We are not acting fast enough to reach that aim. And so we have to do more. We have to reach out and talk to people and to start conversations around the world. And there are many organisations doing brilliant work at starting those conversations to ensure that everyone is aware of the risks and that everyone is aware of the actions they can personally take. Businesses, governments, individuals, society can take many, many different actions to reduce their own emissions. And of course we can vote. We can vote with our wallet by choosing businesses that act appropriately, and we can vote for politicians that would like to do something about this more rapidly. And so it's important to start those climate conversations around the world. At the University of Reading, the way we have chosen to do that is using these stripe graphics. So as David said earlier, in June we projected these stripes representing the change in temperature in the UK onto the White Cliffs of Dover. This was seen by millions of people, raising awareness of what's happening here in the UK. And you can go to showyourstripes.info, find these graphics, download them. They're free to use however you want for any country and many cities around the world. And we can use them to start conversations. They've already been used by rock bands, by fashion designers, by politicians. They've been painted on buildings all over the world to raise awareness of the risks that we face. And as David said earlier, we have built partnerships to start those conversations in novel places, which would not normally talk about climate change. We partnered with Reading Football Club last season, who put the stripes on the sleeves of their kit. You can see here Shane Long celebrating after scoring a goal with the stripes of Reading on his sleeves. So those stripes represent how temperatures in Reading have changed over the last 150 years. It's that local effect. What happens globally affects us all. We are all experiencing our changing climate, even at the smallest town, I should say. Reading's only a town. But these partnerships are important because they start conversations amongst football fans. For example, in the stadium, on the way to matches, in the pub. So the more conversations we can have, the more normal we can make climate conversations about the risks we face and the actions everyone is taking, the better. We can then promote action globally by having those conversations. So if anyone here would like to use these stripes in their own business, their own organisations, we would love to build partnerships with businesses and organisations to make use of these, or you can just download them for free and use them however you want. So we would like to build those partnerships and start those climate conversations. But I'm just going to end with what I think is the most simple message that I have about what we need to do. We need to take actions. We also need to ensure that we are resilient to the changes that are coming. We need to adapt. And we will also need to suffer the consequences. That's inevitable. But we can reduce that suffering as well. So if we choose not to act, or we fail to adapt, then suffer we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go and take your seat. Really, really appreciate that. It's a fantastic overview and a really, really stark reminder of why we are all here. And I guess one other point to mention, just to take Ed's point and move it on a little further, Ed today, by the way, is the star of a piece on Sky Sports, which is to do with what football will look like in 10 to 20 years' time based on climate and sustainability. We went to film with Ed, and I love it when a plan comes together. Here we are at the Envision racing event, and we're going to be reflecting that as well. Yes, quite simply, every action taken to fight the climate crisis is just so vital. So scene set beautifully by Ed. First panel talk today will be tackling the topic of EV revolution, how we can accelerate the transition towards sustainable transport systems. So please welcome on stage our moderator, the founder of Electric Vehicles Outlook and a hugely respected authority on all things EV, ladies and gents, Roger Atkins. Do that at the end, Roger. Do that at the end.
I got so excited by the introduction. Thank you very much for that, David. Yes, my name is Roger Atkins. I've been hanging out on LinkedIn talking about electric vehicles for some time, 15 years or so. I'm ancient, so I've been in the automotive industry for nearly 40 years. But the journey now towards electrification is what we're going to talk about, how we accelerate that, how we see much more electrification of mobility. And we don't just mean cars, of course. We mean many things. And absolutely as critical and important as it is the CO2 climate change challenge, I would argue there's a twin imperative, and that's equally about having clean urban air. Looking at children in the audience in particular, but looking at everybody in the audience, we all want to live in environments in towns and cities where the air we breathe is clean. That's maybe a very obvious statement, but perhaps in some of the narrative, particularly in the popular press that we've seen of late, too much of it is wholly focused on CO2. We can understand why there's such a focus, but it is a twin imperative with electric mobility. It is equally about having air quality, zero tailpipe emissions in all of these vehicles: cars, buses, taxis, vans, trucks, and then all the other things as well. So I can see a few nodding of heads in there. That reassures me that we're going in the right direction. We're going to be talking about the right thing. So we're going to have a panel, and eagle-eyed amongst you will be thinking, well, hang on a second. There's one chair for the bloke talking, and then there's 3 chairs for guests, but there's 4 people up on the screen. Well, let me tell you, we have something pretty significant, I think, in that making a commitment to be involved in things sometimes includes getting up early in the morning. So one of our guests you're about to hear is up, and I think it will be around, we'll hear in a moment, I think it's about 5 o'clock in the morning in East Coast America. So that's what you call dedication. Whatever time you all got up this morning, I suspect most of you didn't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, there you are. So please can I invite to the stage my guests. There is Evan, we have Lee and Fiona. So if you'd like to join me on stage, please. Thank you. And if we can try and get you in the order, oh no, there's not a screen with your names on, that's fine. You can sit where you like, that's even better.
Nice.
And Kirsten, so Kirsten, can you hear me? I presume you're in Detroit, would that be correct?
I can, correct. Yes, good morning.
Excellent. Look at that. It's like magic, everybody, isn't it? Oh, there you are. Perfect. Yeah, on behalf of the whole audience, and certainly this Race Against Climate Change event, thank you for getting up early in the morning. Is it 5 o'clock, 5:30, 20:05?
It is, yes.
Wow, you look good for this time of the morning. Have you been to bed?
I did. I got a few hours of sleep. All good.
Right. Okay. Well, what we're going to talk about, and well, all four of you are going to talk about with us, is what are we actually doing about this? So it's not about principles and, well, I guess it is about objectives, but as much as anything else, it's about actions. What actions are you and the organisations you're part of have embarked on that are going to make a difference in, as I would like to stress, the twin imperative of CO2 reduction and air quality improvement? And if you look at where transportation fits, it's not everything about all of this. The multiplicity of aspects that put the carbon in the air aren't all about transport, but they're a significant part of that, and there's something that we can do something about it, pretty, well, relatively quickly in real terms. So that's definitely what we're going to be talking about. We've got ambitions that sit not just within the Paris Accord, but within other specific objectives that are both UK governmental, European, they're continental, and indeed they're international. They're about what's going on everywhere. So let's just go through our guests. So Evan, nice to meet you again.
Nice to meet you, Roger.
How are you?
Great.
What time did you get up this morning?
Oh, I don't know. It's a bit of a rolling stock as we have, work in 7 time zones.
Right, okay. So Evan is a senior executive with AESC. What does that mean? Well, he's doing one of the most significant parts of the journey towards electrification of anything, which is building gigafactories. You've got an amazing experience. If anyone looks up Evan on LinkedIn, you can see who he's been working with, what he's been doing, and it's fascinating. So I know you're focusing now on building out gigafactories around the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
10, 12, 15? How
Yeah,
many?
we have 13 projects right now, and the demand keeps growing, right? With the need 100x for battery production that we thought, it's hard to build the resources and the team to launch more.
Yeah, wow. Lee, so let's come to you. You're looking after the Net Zero Nuclear and International Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. I haven't got a mic.
Oh, yeah. Beg your pardon. Let's have a look. I think I've got one up here. Try that one.
Thank you.
There you are. Don't do the mic drop like I did, please.
Is it on?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So can you just give us a little flavour then of what you're doing? I mean, that's a big challenge. The whole net zero objective, like all of these things, is incredibly complex. There's a lot in it. How long have you, just very briefly, how long have you been at it, and are you enjoying it, if I can put it like that?
The department's been at it for a long time. I mean, there's been an evolution from DEC through to BASE and now the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero. I personally have been in the role as Director General for just over 2 years. So I came in back to the departments. I used to work in DEC, and then I went elsewhere for a bit, but back to the departments, and I couldn't arrive at a better time. So, we have set out, I think, we were the first country to set out a comprehensive strategy for how we would achieve net zero by 2050,
Right.
covering all sectors, and obviously now the challenge is to implement it.
Yes. So you're really at the heart of things. I almost said you're at the coal face of all of this. But that would be the
Don't say that.
completely wrong analogy. Yeah, I know, absolutely. Thank you. Fiona, I think
Hi.
you have got a mic, haven't you? On your
I have, yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Oh, perfect. There you are. So Octopus Energy, electric vehicles, you've been there for some time. You've done a number of other things in terms of this whole arena of how we're making the switch. Can you just tell us a little bit about, because Octopus is an energy company, isn't it?
Well, we do lots of different things. Oh, hello, that was quite loud. Yeah, we do lots of things. I mean, we're using tech to accelerate the energy transition, and that includes everything from EVs to flexibility with your heat pumps, generating electricity. We have about 6 billion of wind and solar assets under management as well. We're supplying renewable energy to 5 million homes in the UK, and we're actually international now. We're in about over 10 different markets, operations in 10 different countries. Specifically in EVs, though, I mean, I'm super excited. I got into this with Octopus specifically 6 years ago. At the time, there was about 5 cars that did just over 100 miles. And it was like you could name them all. I could list them all the details of them to you in detail, like endlessly. Now there's like nearly 100 different models that we offer across like 30 different manufacturers, and I just can't keep up personally.
Well,
The kind of transformation that we've seen in the last 6 years, and through that, as Octopus, we've been trying to bring out innovative energy tariffs so you can charge up in the middle of the night for a fraction of the cost. We've got public charging network. Obviously, we don't run one, but actually we've integrated across loads of them. So you've got one app, one charge card, make it super simple. Actually, that's about 400,000 chargers across Europe now. And then my business specifically is bringing that all together, and we've got a leasing business in there so you can get the car, the charger, the energy tariff, the whole works. And we just make it as easy as possible with the experts to help.
Great. Well, it's great to hear that it's cumulative as well, that it's definitely accelerating. And I'm also glad you're selling more than 8 cars, because I did think for a minute, perhaps if you're Octopus vehicles, you only got 8. But there you are. Anyway, Kristen Seaman, you're Chief Sustainability Officer at General Motors. General Motors, fascinating company. I mean, huge company, very important, significant company, not just in America, but in the world. I'm not going to go through the whole historical aspect of where you are with EVs, but the GM EV1, I can't help but bring that to mind. If anyone doesn't know, this was an early stage electric vehicle back in the 1990s, in fact. But yeah, so there's a lot of ambition now at GM. Mary Barra is very strident in her objectives, both in terms of the EV proposition in general. Good news, by the way, to hear recently you're reinstating the Bolt. I think that was a great decision. So can you just briefly tell us a little bit about what you're doing then, please, Kristen?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So yes, we've actually been doing EVs for quite a while, as you mentioned, but we made some big, bold commitments back in January of 21. First was to be carbon neutral in our products and operations by 2040, and the second was to eliminate tailpipe emissions from new light-duty U.S. vehicles by 2035. So, as you said, we've been on quite a journey. Those are both based on science-based targets, so we're very committed to making this transition and to make it as quickly as we can. Really excited with all of the products that are coming out, whether it be the Hummer EV that's currently in production, Cadillac Lyriq, our Silverado EV is going to be launching this year. So really going to have products, as was mentioned, across all the segments. So really everybody can see themselves in an EV and make that transition and still continue the lifestyle and the needs of the vehicle that they have today. So really exciting time in the industry, and we're proud at GM to really be leading that transition.
Good. That's great to hear. So I'm going to try and speedily go through a few questions specifically to each of you, one in turn, and then we'll come to some general stuff. So Evan, let me start with you. You've got, like I mentioned earlier, a wealth of experience in building gigafactories. You work, I think, with Tesla building gigafactories. So the recent announcement from Tata Group of the Somerset Gigafactory, at long last, here in the UK, what's that going to do? Apart from build a gigafactory in Somerset, what else will it do in terms of here in the UK, our ambition towards being, very much involved in the electric vehicle proposition?
Yeah, I guess, like you said, I was involved with Tesla as we coined the term gigafactory. And in 2014, this little team of engineers was pretty excited that we were doubling the world's capacity of battery cells with one factory, right? The size of that factory is only 1/200th of what we need now. And so if you double click into the UK, and to meet some of our challenges and goals, we need to displace, 35 million cars on the road with electric vehicles. We need to change the sale of 1.2 million cars over to electric. You need a lot of batteries for this, right? And you need sustainable batteries. The major battery factory is the company I now joined recently, ASC, with a factory in Sunderland. And I'm excited that Tata and JLR are investing what was announced as around £4 billion to build up new capacity, right? And this is only the start. I mean, even with this factory expansion, 20%, it's 30% of the goal. So the answer is, it's a great step. It's good to see the industry moving and making investments. And then the combination with our friends in the government and our raw material suppliers will grow up a UK electric vehicle market.
I wish we had a lot more time to talk about that raw material supply a bit, because the upstream supply chain of where mining and mineral processing works, I would recommend a book, by the way, called Material World by Ed Conway, that really illustrates where have we come from, where are we now, and where do we go, because that's very much about, the material world of mining and minerals and all of this stuff. So another time, perhaps we'll talk about that.
We could talk forever.
Lee, can I ask you then about where we are with this ambition for net zero? Where are we? So 2030, we've only got 7 years of it. What is it now? What are the building blocks of making that happen, and how do they kind of coalesce to get things to accelerate? So it's not just 7 years, things get faster during those 7 years. Can you give us a flavour of that?
Yeah, thanks very much. So I think our overall approach in governments is to do two things. So one, firstly, set the right sort of regulatory framework with clear, consistent signals about intent. And then the second half is around where government support is required, either if there are significant barriers or challenges that need to be overcome. So look, on the first, it's very clear, we've got a very clearly articulated set of ambitions at 2030 and 2035, which everybody will know about because they're very publicly available. And then to sort of back that up in terms of how we're going to get to those positions, we've just recently consulted on, I think, a really ambitious ZEV mandate, which sort of sets out the percentage reductions we would expect to see in sales of new vehicles, petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030, and onwards to the 25 target to be 100% zero emission from the tailpipe. So I think it is a really strong proposition from government. We've finished the consultation. I think we got over 140 responses. Really great. We're analysing those now, and we expect to come out, at some point in the not too distant future, sort of set out the targets. So you create the context, you send the market signals. Hopefully they are strong enough that businesses and investors feel confident to invest. And then the second half, just to finish, on the sort of financial support. So we've already invested about £2 billion over a period of time. Initially, that was focused on offsetting the higher upfront charges for people who are buying EVs. But now the main focus is on increasing the rollout of charging infrastructure. And although we expect most of that to come from private sector, and I know there's been various commitments about funding from the private investors, which is fantastic, we think there's two areas where government needs to lean in. So the first is around the sort of rapid charging points on the strategic road network, and we have the Rapid Charging Fund to support that, and then also in accelerating off-street charging points for those that don't have capability to do it, on-street charging for those that don't have capability to do it off-street.
Yeah, and evidence of some of what you said there. Certainly, I think only this week there was $500 million investment in GridServe.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
you can see the money is coming into this.
And look, can I just finish on one
Yeah.
thing? So basically the evidence we've got showing that that is working. So the number of sales of EVs is going through the it's really accelerating.
Yeah.
So we're up to 25% now compared to I think 11% in 2021, and that's really positive. I mean, there's still a lot more to go.
Yes.
And as we move forward, in terms of how the second-hand car market rolls out and accessibility increases, but as you said, the number of models that are available now is really going through the roof. Yeah.
Well, yeah, indeed, it's going through the roof, just like solar as well. That's going through the roof as well at the moment, apparently. Kristen, I'm going to come to you next because I'm very conscious of where you are and what time. We've seen in America recently, last year and a bit, the Inflation Reduction Act. So can you give us a little flavour of what are the most important infrastructure investments to be made by your company, GM, and, if you like, that wider impact of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is $380 billion of government money across a whole bunch of things. Can you give us a sense of where GM is now with that, exploiting that and using that as leverage?
Absolutely. So, the great thing about the Inflation Reduction Act is really the things in place that are going to help accelerate this transition to an EV future. So whether it be the tax credits for customer purchases of EVs to R&D investment, the push for localizing and manufacturing, and even the work around charging infrastructure. So, we're really excited about the support and the partnerships to make this transition happen faster and leveraging that to really be able to build out the infrastructure so we can see this transition happen. And as we accelerate, our production, talking about battery manufacturing, we've announced already we have one in production, and we have 3 more that are in process for battery cell manufacturing in the U.S. with partners that we have, joint ventures developing that, as well as really making the transition across our manufacturing footprint. So a number of our facilities have already made that transition. We've got plants producing all across the U.S. So really great to see that partnership. We know we can't make this transition on our own, and so to have the incentives and things in place to build out the infrastructure and really accelerate it is going to be great for everyone.
Wow, that's a very positive outlook, and I'm glad to hear that. And I think you've said some significant things there, lots of significant things, but the one that stands out for me is about collaboration, is about international collaboration, is about us finding that blend of collaboration with competition. Competition is instinctive. It's what we do. It's what all creatures do. But blending that far better into collaboration and having great partnerships across the world is really important. Fiona, can I come to you in terms of Octopus then? So you have been very focused on of course you have, it's your job, selling electric cars, but you focus particularly on business people, on leasing rates, on salary sacrifice, on things that perhaps people weren't aware of, and taking away that focus from the capital cost of an electric vehicle, the sticker price, and how much it costs you to own it in the long run, the whole life cost. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Has that worked? Has that been successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think one of the things, we talked there a bit about the ZEV mandate and some of the kind of things to encourage car manufacturers to bring more cars to the UK. But there's also this really attractive offer that the government's helped do around company car tax, low benefit in kind rate tax. And what that means is that employers can put in place employee benefit schemes, and their employees can take a car as a benefit and pay out of their gross salary, saving income tax and national insurance. And that means that people are saving 30 to 40% every month on their electric car. And despite the fact that these cars have been £5,000 to £10,000 more expensive than their petrol diesel equivalent, it's now cheaper on a monthly basis. In addition to that, if they can charge at home, they can probably save about £1,000 a year on average by using green electricity in the middle of the night at home to fill up. So the whole thing really stacks up, and unsurprisingly, it's been very popular. It's great for the companies they're putting in place, it's good for retention, engagement, but also a really clear statement of their commitment to making the change and really pushing towards net zero. So they're seeing a wave of now their employees taking these electric cars. It's absolutely fantastic. We can go and do drive days. And this is the other thing. We're seeing a lot of misinformation in the minute around electric cars and whether people want them and how long the batteries are going to last. Well, actually, people try them. If you haven't driven one yet, you need to go and test drive an electric car because they are amazing and they are great fun. And actually, because there are so many from different manufacturers, you don't want to have to go through all the dealers to figure it out. Actually come to one place that can tell you about all the different range of them, what's available, which ones you have to wait over a year to get, which ones you can get right now. This really helps just make it really easy to make that transition.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hands up anyone who's driven an electric car. I'm not going to say who owns one or hasn't yet. Yeah, obviously the younger people, not yet, unless you did something sneaky. You did something sneaky when your mum and dad wasn't watching. That's good to see. And will there be a sales desk downstairs? Yeah. Look, we've only got a few minutes. We really haven't got enough time to go through the real kind of detailed stuff of this. So I want to ask two quick questions. We talk a lot about supply chains, mineral supply chains, all these kind of stuff. What about people? Evan, are we going to have a problem getting enough people to go into all of these gigafactories? What about talent? Same for any of you. So please, Kristen, kick in on this answer at all, anyone at all.
Please.
Are we okay in terms of talented people? We've got young people here looking for careers in the future. Where are we with that resource?
Yeah, if we don't have an ambition and, like you said, a global collaboration, we will have challenges. And those challenges can happen locally if certain countries don't have the right education, university incentives, connections with industry, and visas, right, for bringing the global talent we need in and out of the country. We will have a challenge. But I believe more and more of the collaborative elements of this from government, from industry, et cetera, even between suppliers and OEMs, like me and GM, are starting to wake up to this, and there's big movements, right? For example, I have a leader of each project on these 13 factories, and one of their initiatives is what they're doing with university recruiting, what they're doing with talent acquisition. This is critical. We need battery engineering roles. We need EV engineering roles, just like there were automotive and petroleum engineers brought up over the last 30 years. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, here we are in the Science Museum. I think a focus on science, physics, chemistry, but not just that, many other things. I mean, are you doing okay for this, GM? Are you okay for talent, or are you running short?
No, absolutely. And, I guess two comments I would make. One is I completely agree on the collaboration. We need to all work together. We need to join forces on making this change. We can compete on products, but we need to work together to make this acceleration. As far as the workforce, first off, I'm an engineer by degree, so I'm a firm believer that, engineers are trained to solve problems. This is a huge problem, so we've got that talent, and whether you're working on one technology or another, the physics are the same, and we need to use that problem-solving capability. The same goes for our entire workforce. And so, we really are focused on bringing our workforce along with us as we make this transition. You may be assembling a different part than you are today or working on a different technology, but the thought process, the focus on safety and quality and all of that is built in. I also do a lot of recruiting, and one of the things we always get asked is about green jobs, and are we going to have enough green jobs in the future? My belief is that we need to green all jobs, and we need to build sustainability and that logic and that thought process and focus into all careers, whether it be finance or public policy or engineering, whatever the case. It's important for everyone, just like we're doing inside our company, everyone to have that focus and understanding of the role that they play in this future.
Great. Well, that's encouraging. Lee, you've got something, then we're going to wrap. So
I totally agree with what's been said. But this is a problem across the whole of the green transition, the clean energy transition more broadly, and it's a massive opportunity. So it's great to see some school children here. They are the future. We need to incentivize them and excite them about coming into a growing business that's going to be sustainable and green jobs for the future, high quality jobs, and branding these things. Not just physics. I did physics, but not just physics or engineering or whatever else. This is about climate change, and it is about clean energy transition.
Yeah, well said. But all of you, thank you very, very much. And I think the message here is that the future is now. The future is talking about what's to come, but it is right now. So teaching and learning and having that kind of transition, reskilling, all of those things, that commodity above all others, we could argue, human talent, is at the core of this. So if you're watching this, you're in the audience here thinking about this, that's, I think, one of the key focuses we've got to have, is to encourage people to come into the industry, all the industries that associate with it, and progress that way. So,
what an
panel.
opportunity.
Sorry?
It's what an opportunity. It's
it's a massive opportunity.
An amazing time to be alive, to be able to
And that's it. It's looking at all these things in a different way round to some of the popular narrative. The battery as an opportunity, not a liability. People and the transition as a huge opportunity in terms of work and changing things for the better. And I know from a number of friends that I have who have switched careers from different things, there's nothing better than feeling part of a movement that's doing the right thing, that's part of a process of change for the better. So on that final note, I know we've only skimmed the surface. We haven't talked about a lot of things, but we always have to keep our schedule nice and tight so we can talk to everybody. Thank you so much for getting up early in the morning, Kristen. Good luck with GM and everything else that you're doing. Likewise to the rest of the panel here in London. And thank you very much for your time and attention. David, back to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Sorry I didn't give...
Thank you, Roger. Thanks to Roger for chairing that conversation so superbly, and thanks to Fiona and Evan and Kristen over East Coast USA and Lee. Lots of different themes emerged there for me. Investment in infrastructure, competition versus collaboration, and also about communication to that. And then lovely sort of end note there on talent. I think it is all about the people. It always comes back to the people and the opportunity, as Fiona said. I mean, what a time to really get into this and have an impact, not just have a say, but have an impact in what is going to happen going forward. Okay, now for the next talk, I'm delighted to say that we were lucky enough to speak to Dr. Jane Goodall, DBE, a world-renowned ethologist, conservationist, founder of the Jane Goodall Institute and a UN Messenger for Peace. Dr. Goodall kindly took time out of her very busy schedule to speak to Graham Lawton, writer and columnist for New Scientist magazine. Now, as we all know, Dr. Goodall is a global icon. She spent many decades helping to create a better world for people, for other animals, for the planet that we share, by inspiring greater understanding and action on behalf of the natural world. In what you're about to see, she shares her views on the vital role that young people can play in shaping a more sustainable future, the importance of hope in the face of such huge global challenges, and also what continues to inspire her to campaign so passionately about the climate and biodiversity crisis. Have a look.
It's been an amazing journey, this life of mine. This planet has filled me with the wonder of all living things, great and small. We cannot ignore this earth that surrounds us, that feeds us, shelters us, replenishes our bodies and our souls, and stretches our imaginations, where animals, plants, air, water, all care for us. We're all interconnected. People, animals, our environment. When nature suffers, we suffer. And when nature flourishes, we all flourish. I do believe in the possibility of a world where we can live in harmony with nature, but only if every one of us does our part to make that world a reality. So that when you look back over your journey, your life, you can truly say, I did make a difference.
Hello and welcome, Dr. Goodall, DBE. Thanks for joining us today. For anyone watching who doesn't know you, and I can't believe there are any people watching who don't know you, can you just give us a brief overview of your journey from scientist to activist and what inspires you to campaign so passionately around climate and biodiversity?
Okay, well, you know, there was a time before 1986 I thought I'd stay at Gombe National Park studying chimpanzees forever. They were the best days of my life. And then I realized at this conference where we brought the chimpanzee people together, that chimpanzee numbers were dropping across Africa and forests were disappearing. So I went to the conference as a scientist. I left as an activist. I just knew I had to do something. Well, I didn't really know what to do, but went to Africa, learned about the problems facing the chimps, habitat destruction, hunting, and so on. But I also learned about the problems faced by so many African people in poverty, with no good health, education, degraded land, moving into the forest. And I just knew that we had to find a way for these people to make a living without destroying the environment, or we couldn't save anything.
And has that worked? I mean, have we managed to give people a good life and also start to preserve biodiversity?
Yes, it's honestly, it's amazing. This program, it started Take Care. We call it Takari. We just published a book about it. And it's a very holistic program, starting with choosing local people, not a group of arrogant white people going in and saying, this is what we're going to do to make your lives better, but local people, 7 of them, who went into the villages and listened and asked them what they wanted. So it's a totally holistic program. And some of its main things, other than restoring fertility to the overused farmland without chemicals, is microcredit based on Muhammad Yunus's Grameen Bank, and also scholarships to keep girls in school, because it's been shown all around the world that as women's education improves, family size drops, and the births per woman when I first went to Gombe were 8 to 10 children per woman, and that's changing. So now in 104 villages throughout chimp habitat in Tanzania, we've got this program. We've got it in 7 other African countries around chimp habitat, and the people have understood protecting the environment isn't just for wildlife, it's for their own future. So they've become our partners in conservation.
We still face enormous global challenges around climate and biodiversity. Why do you think a message of hope is so important in driving people to take action?
Because I truly believe that we've got a window of time to make change, but it's closing. And if people lose hope, if you don't believe that what you're going to do is making a difference, why bother? So people tend to fall into apathy. They also look around at the problems of the world. You can't do that and not be depressed. And so I say, no, you can't save the world, but you can do something in your community. Get a group of people together, do what you care about, what you're passionate about. And so many people have told me that they promise now they'll do their bit that they had given up. So, and also my biggest hope is in the youth. We've got our youth program, kindergarten through university, now in 69 countries, and it's growing all the time.
That would be the Roots and Shoots program.
The Roots and Shoots program, yeah.
Could you just explain to us how that's working to educate and engage young people?
Yeah, it started, it actually began in 91 with 12 high school students in Tanzania who were, they were very upset about different things going on around them, the poaching, the illegal dynamite fishing, destroying the coral reefs, the street children sniffing glue with no homes, terrible treatment of stray dogs, or different things. So I said, well, get your friends together. And so we had a meeting of 30 young people, and we decided the most important message was every day you live, you make some impact on the planet, and you can choose what sort of impact you make. And because I learned in the rainforest how everything is interconnected, we decided every group would choose a project to help people, one to help animals, one to help the environment. And so I think it's because they can choose. They then discuss, roll up their sleeves, and take action.
And you said that's now active in 69 countries?
Yes. And
across the world?
Yes, across the world. I mean, in some countries, there's only 1 or 2 groups, but that's the start. And in about 10 countries, it's really strong. It's really strong in America, Canada, Austria, Australia, getting stronger in Germany and France, growing fast in the UAE, right across China. And I've just been Japan and South Korea, where groups are growing.
Young people seem to have taken the initiative. They're really grasping the nettle that our current generation of leaders has refused to grasp. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it is indeed. And you know, I, I, I truly believe that people have to change from within. So you can yell at people and you can point fingers and you can blame them and tell them to change. And most of them aren't going to listen. So for me, it's telling a story that reaches the heart. And I had a wonderful story from a CEO of a big international company when I was talking to a group of them. And he said, Jane, I've been really working to get my organization more ethical in a country where we source, in the supply line, in my offices, and the way we treat our customers. One, seeing the writing on the wall that we're using up natural resources too fast. Two, consumer pressure. People are getting more aware and they want to buy products that are being ethically produced. But he said what tipped the balance was my little girl of 8. And she came back from school one day and she said, Daddy, they tell me that what you're doing is hurting the planet. That's not true, is it, Daddy? Because it's my planet. That reached the heart.
Yeah, stories are a really powerful way of reaching out to people and getting them to really understand what's going on. Now, we were talking about corporate responsibility, and I think you said that it is the responsibility of businesses to lead the way in the race to net zero. But how important is collaboration with, I guess, the enemy to some extent
They are enemies.
in accelerating this change?
Well, I think, you know, one of the most important things is collaboration and partnerships. People have been working on all these different problems, but so often in silos. And, you know, so you may solve one problem. And if you're not looking at the big picture and working with others, then you may not realize you're causing problems somewhere else. Like, oh, we've closed down a coal mine. Great, all these CO2 emissions not going into the greenhouse gases. But if you're not looking at the whole picture, what about the people who lose their jobs? And if you had the big picture, there are people training those whose industries have closed into alternate jobs. So you could have done both together.
I recently had the privilege of seeing wild chimpanzees for the first time in Uganda, in Chumbora Gorge in Uganda, and it was a moving experience for me. And I think that it's important for people to have contact with nature to really understand what we're doing to nature and what we stand to lose.
Yes, you've hit on a real problem, this disconnect between people and nature, especially in the big cities. And if you don't understand something, you know, you're not going to want to protect it. And virtual nature isn't the same as being out and you just saw chimpanzees. You look in their eyes and it's very moving. And, you know, so we try in our roots and shoots and get little kids out into nature as often as we possibly can. So that, you know, you see, and I remember taking inner city children from the black community. I think it was New York or somewhere, it doesn't matter. And this young man who was their leader, you know, with his dreadlocks and his hood, he really didn't want to come. But then we had nets to pull stuff out of the stream, all the little wriggly things, put them into a bowl of water and look at them. And he just got more and more transfixed. And he was about 16. And he was so amazed that he invited me to the schools in his neighborhood, which, you know, was just incredible, and came with me.
So I spend a lot of time reporting on the various global crises that we face, and it can sometimes be rather, as you said earlier, depressing. But you still manage to maintain an optimism that these are challenges that we can win.
Well, we can win, but there's a big but. It's if we get together and take action quickly. You know, this is why I'll be 90 next year, but I still have to travel about 300 days a year, which, okay, I have to fly and that's bad for the environment, but I haven't been given a magic carpet yet. So. And it does make a difference being there in person. I do lots of Zooming like this. But, you know, you've got to wake people up. And if they lose hope, they're not going to do anything. So my recent book is the Book of Hope, and that has inspired many people to take action.
That's a wonderful message. That's what today really is all about, is getting together, collaborating, using all the tools at our disposal to try and tackle these problems. Dr. Goodall, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us. You remain an inspiration to all of us.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And let's say what I say with Roots and Shoots: together we can save the world. Together we will, because we can, but will we? And then together we must.
Wow, what an inspiration. 89 years young, Dr. Jane Goodall, DBE, and just a couple of reflections. The disconnect between us and nature. I mean, I personally think it's one of the closest things that we can connect to. When we talk about this subject, I always think about trying to make people connect with it, make this relevant, make this resonant, climate and nature, because we know the climate crisis is a nature and biodiversity crisis as well. Make it emotional, make it personal, and then maybe we can get to where Dr. Goodall, DBE, wants us to get to. Okay, time to get on with the next part of today's offering. Here we go.
Taking things apart and kind of questioning things, you know, realise that in these everyday products there's so much going on. Deconstructing that and then creating something else from all these parts, that's the fun and exciting bit. The project is called Recovery. It's commissioned by Envision Racing to recreate a gem-free car out of post-consumer electronic waste.
So important to kind of encourage kids to see the beauty and the value in materials. There's so many different things that we can use as materials to make other things from, such as Fonrica.
The likes of games consoles, phones, radios, all sorts of electronic waste to highlight the problem that we're in.
The challenging part is a constantly evolving piece. So I want to create this sense of movement. I want it to feel as though it's been driven and like it's lost its outer shell to uncover what's underneath these things. You just imagine a little race car running around these if it was a little race circuit. You learn so much by taking things apart. You see the beauty of what goes into these products. Hopefully that inspires people to take things apart and see actually how they build, how materials work, and if you can make something from them, then great. If not, then recycle the bits that we can do. The message I want to send to people is to take some more forward consideration over the things that we use on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, this is what I love about Envision Racing, that they flip the script, they change things up, they look at things from a different angle, they come up with these amazing ideas. So earlier this year, Envision Racing launched a campaign to raise awareness of the growing problem of electronic waste and to inspire young people globally to try and take action to address it. As you saw there, British artist and designer Liam Hopkins has been very, very busy these past few months building a full-size replica Gen 3 Formula E car from e-waste. So you can see there thousands of parts of laptops, mobile phones, disposable vapes, and so on and so forth. The car was actually revealed to the media yesterday at the track. A few lucky guests even got the chance to drive it, because yes, it does move. It's not just a model. Admittedly a little bit slower than the cars that will be going on track later today and over the weekend. And to get young people involved in this campaign, Envision also ran a Recover E Waste to Race competition, which invited entrants to have a go at building their very own mini model of a Gen 3 Formula E race car from everyday e-waste. The standard and the creativity of the entries really blew the judges away. Have a look. Just ingenious, isn't it? Well, it is a competition, so it's time to announce the winners of the Recover E Waste to Race competition. Before we do so, though, please welcome on stage, you saw him in a VT just before, British artist and designer Liam Hopkins. You've got prizes. You've got prizes. Great to see you, Liam. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for your involvement with this. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. And yeah, what an incredible creation you've been at the heart of there. Okay, so it's time to go through in the age categories from oldest to youngest who has won the Waste to Race competition. So in the 17 to 21-year-olds category, congratulations go to Hera May, age 17 from the Philippines. Give her a big round of applause. There she is. On to the 12 to 16-year-olds category. I'm going to have to get my best Latin American accent on for this one. The winner is Angelica Miriam Montero Popocatl, age 14 from Mexico. How was that? Was that all right? Was that all right? Okay, right. Now this bit really is very special. We are very excited that the winners from our youngest age group, 9 to 11-year-olds, are actually here in person to showcase their design and also to receive their prize from Liam. So please give it up for students from Abbott Community Primary School in Manchester. They are Edie Griffin, Chiduba Mungeni, Liam Mount, Nora Papula and Olivia Ho. Come on up, guys. You didn't know about this. You did not know about this. Come on up. Come on up, come on up, come on up, come on up. Oh my, we have tears on stage. Wow, okay, right. Liam's got the prize, and by the way, along with some Envision racing stuff, which is obviously you want to kind of like, you know, give people some little souvenirs to take away, there is also a map book which is refurbished, obviously. If you think about it, it kind of goes with the campaign. It's one to share, no fighting. Very, very well done. This is the car itself. It looks magnificent. I'm going to just speak to a couple of you, if that's okay. I'm going to just throw you in here. Hi there, what's your name?
Olivia.
Olivia, hi. No reason to be scared, Olivia. It's okay, it's okay. Just tell us what you got in this car. What's the e-waste that you've got involved in the car?
A laptop, 2 laptops, and that's it.
Oh, wow, all from 2 laptops. Amazing. And what's your name?
Nora.
Nora, what was the inspiration behind doing it? When you kind of came together to try and win this competition, what was the approach? How did you go about it?
I'm not really sure.
just grab 2 laptops and just see what you can find, basically.
Yeah, we basically just started breaking stuff like crazy.
Smashing stuff. Well, I love that, because quite simply, smashing stuff, which then gives it another purpose, is what I call creativity. So that's fine for me. And just finally, what does it mean to you guys to win this prize? Just you know, how important is it to you?
It's like representing the school, like for school's sake.
Yeah. And you must be so proud. You must be so proud. Oh my goodness. You're just an absolute picture to me. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gents, I think it's absolutely wonderful. I'm just so glad that we've had this moment on stage. You guys did not know about this. I bet when you came here, and the first thing you see, with all due respect, is Professor Ed Hawkins standing here talking for 10 minutes, you probably think you're at school again, don't you? But no. No, we thought that we would give you an extra special prize. You've done so well, and you are the winners of the Recovery Waste to Race competition for the youngest age group 9 to 11. Very well done. Abbott Community Primary School. Give it up. Off you go. Off you go. Liam, thank you very much indeed. Take the Mac, but do not smash it up. And look at the car, my God. That's incredible. It's incredible. I love that. What a moment. Fantastic. And you were completely in the dark, weren't you? That's just brilliant. Okay, well, congratulations again to everyone who were winners and who were entrants for the competition. Thank you very much indeed for getting involved. Okay, time to go on with the next part of the show. Here we go.
Glitched out, phased out, scratched up, smashed in, short circuited. Electronic gadgets make the world go round. But when they're done, where do they go? 50 million tons of e-waste every year, weighing more than all the airliners ever made. A fifth is recycled, and the rest degrades and decays because we want that new laptop, we want that new TV, washing machine, air conditioner, vacuum cleaner, hairdryer. Our demand for new tech never tires. But how much more can our planet take of machines that are made to break? We need gadgets we can lease, repair, and recycle. A circular economy that spins like vinyl to create new from the old. We need industries to design smarter products that last longer. We need policies to manage e-waste better. And when you buy your tech, think about where it'll end. Together, we can put this planet on the mend.
Yeah, why not? Some great little VTs as part of today. Right, well, we saw him earlier in recorded form. And as compelling as he was, I think it's better to see Graham Lawton live in person, in the actual flesh. So I'm pleased to be able to welcome Graham back. And this time he's going to be joined, as you can see there, by a super lineup of speakers just to delve a little deeper into the problem of electronic waste and how we can adopt a more circular approach to the EV transition. Graham, welcome along.
I seem to start that video in fuzzy vision for some reason, but here I am in full focus right now. Thanks, David. I'm really delighted to be here and that New Scientist is partnering with Envision Racing for this really important event, highlighting such a critical topic. And, you know, as we've already heard, the transition to electric vehicles is vital in the fight against climate change. But alongside emissions reductions, the full benefits of electrification will not be felt without the creation of a truly circular economy. Now, the UK was named as the second biggest producer of electronic waste per capita in 2022. So while the effects of e-waste are global, the problem of how to tackle them is definitely close to home. Now, can anyone guess what the largest per capita producer of e-waste in the world was? You won't be able to guess. Norway. You did guess. Well, you knew. So the Gen 3 battery, which has now been introduced into Formula E racing, is amongst the most sustainable ever made. The battery cells will be reused and recycled at the end of their life, demonstrating that we can get a circular approach going with electronic waste. But what about consumer e-waste? And what can be done to tackle this? How can technology be part of that solution instead of the problem? And what are some of the implications for our planet and our health if we don't act? Now, and I'm going to invite my panelists onto the stage. Joining us, first of all, we have Matt Manning, Head of Circular Economy at BT. Matt's been working in sustainability for over 10 years and currently leads on the circular economy at BT Group. We also have Professor Carlo Ratti. Professor Ratti is Director of Sensible City Lab at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's an architect and an engineer by training who directs this lab at MIT, and he's a leading voice in the debate on new technologies and the impact on urban life and design. On screen, I believe, we have Dr. Maria Neira from the World Health Organization. She's the Director of Environment, Climate Change and Health there at WHO, and she leads the WHO's interventions related to environmental determinants. Environmental determinants of health, so climate change, chemical safety, air pollution, radiation, water, that kind of thing. And last but very much not least, we have Monica Uman, who is the Vice President of Brand Communications and Digital Content Strategy for Warner Brothers Discovery. Welcome, Monica. Monica's an award-winning brand strategy expert who leads an international team across brand growth and other things at Cartoon Network, Boomerang, Cartoonito, and Boeing across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So, having introduced you all, I'll take my seat. Am I live? Yeah, okay. Matt, let's start with you. So BT's been a leader on climate and sustainability action for over 30 years and set up one of the world's first science-based targets in 2008. But as a producer of phones and other consumer electronics, what are you doing or planning to do to reduce the amount of e-waste produced?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Big question, big challenge. I suppose there's two parts of the electronic equipment that BT as an organisation place onto the market and give to consumers. So as some of you may be aware, so BT Group, mobile broadband, for our own equipment such as routers and set-top boxes, actually we've set up a process where the consumer no longer owns those bits of kit. So when they have them in their home, they're essentially leasing them. And at the end of the contract, if they move on, that kit then comes back to us. And we've got a refurbishment operation up in Scotland, which then refurbishes that kit, which then goes back into stock to then go back out again. So for us, there's the financial incentive doing that, because clearly it's a lot cheaper to reuse an item that's already been made rather than having a new one made. And also the emissions linked to that are significantly less, and also avoids people hoarding onto equipment in homes, which it's been well documented. There's millions and millions of devices, not just in the UK, but globally. People don't know what to do with them. They just sit in their cupboards, or even worse, go in their general waste and then get incinerated or landfilled. On the phone side of things, it's working with those leading manufacturers in terms of what they're doing. So opportunities that we have as a telecoms provider is at the point of that purchase, if someone is changing their phone, is getting that old device back. Again, phones are one of those common items that tend to be hoarded away, either over data concerns or people don't know what to do with them. But if we can get those back, last year we got about 190,000 phones back. 97% of those are reused. So they're a hugely reusable item, and then a small percentage can go on to be recycled. And I suppose linking that back to that EV transition, a lot of that smart tech is battery powered. So as you imagine, there's going to be loads and loads of lithium batteries sitting in those cupboards. If we can get those back out and back into the supply chain, that's going to build some resilience into that rather than being reliant on mining that material all the time.
So does that mean building circularity into the whole process when the design of the phone is designed to be dismantled and reused at the end?
Absolutely, and you've seen some challenger brands within that phone market. So Fairphone, for example, make a phone that is modular, so you can easily replace it and change it. And I think you're seeing some of those other organisations now come up against those challenges of you're making a phone which basically is glued together, you can't take it apart. But actually for them as well, they're setting targets to increase the recycled materials within those devices, and ultimately for them, making their phone easier to dismantle at the end of life is going to make it easier to then recover that material and then put back into any new devices they're making.
So that's BT, but what's the rest of the tech industry doing? I mean, are you ahead of the game, or are other people involved in this kind of circularity?
Yeah, I mean, certainly within our sector of telecoms, where those providers are providing kit, a lot are now moving to that leasing model for the devices as they're coming back. And then similarly, in terms of the wider spectrum, you're seeing a lot of those OEMs set targets on circularity, setting up collection systems, ultimately getting those devices back or setting up models. And a lot of them now are moving and selling their own refurbished kit as well, because they're seeing that grow in that demand of people not always wanting to buy new, because often that new technology hasn't really moved on a huge amount since the old model, and actually it's a much lower entry cost for people to get devices. We're actually upgrading from, say, let's use Apple for example, from an iPhone 8 to a 12 to that person is an upgrade. They don't need to jump to the latest device. So they're seeing that kind of gap in that market and that opportunity to reuse those devices more than once in the market.
Okay, thank you. Carla, let's turn to you now, please. There's often an issue with tracking e-waste. The sheer quantity makes it very difficult to keep track of, and makes it difficult to know who's responsible for its recovery. Now, at Sensible City Lab, I think maybe you can tell us a bit about what that lab does, but you've added digital tags to trash, then followed them as they move through the city's waste system. Is that something that could be done for e-waste as well?
Yeah, thanks, Ram. So I ran a lab, I'm Professor Dematier, ran a lab called Sensible City Lab. Over the past 15, 20 years, we've been helping to develop the space of smart cities. The interesting thing is actually a lot of what we are discussing today is the convergence of digital and physical, and it's changing the way we understand, design, and ultimately live in our cities. And that clearly has a big impact on trash. So I totally agree, the important thing, the first thing is, can we use things for longer? The second thing is, once can we reuse things? Once we finish using them, can somebody else make use of part of the whole thing? But then more generally, at some point, things will become waste in what we do. Now, what we did, the project you mentioned, is something we started a few years ago. And somehow, electronics is the problem, but maybe electronics can also be the solution. So we got all these kind of digitally connected objects, and then it's easy just to transform into something that can also tell you where they go at the end of life.
We did the first experiment in Seattle. In Seattle, we had like 500 volunteers, 3,000 pieces of trash. And all those pieces of trash, from e-waste to banana peels, we were able to track. And actually, it was interesting. That had never been done. And some of the large e-waste management companies, some of the largest in the US and in the world, they were very surprised by the results. They worked with us on the project. And so we saw that today, everybody does a small piece of the chain. Not the supply chain, but call it the removal chain. But when you map the whole thing, you describe you find out very interesting things and how all of this could be optimized. So somehow, e-waste, we can actually use the problem to find new solutions and to use electronics in order to think about a future where, again, waste will be more traceable, trackable, where we can have information on how to dismantle things. And that really is where we need to go in the point where everything then becomes circular, and then you reuse, recycle at the end of life as much as you can, and every component can have different lives, be reimplanted into something else, or again, be reused for the materials it contains. I want the final thing. I think this is very important in e-waste, but for instance, this is very important in the building industries, which is responsible for a huge amount of waste, including more and more electronics we put in our homes, and that's still working like in the 1900s. And I think, doing that also is the big next frontier, how we can think about making a building in a way that's more similar to how we make a phone or an Airbus or a plane, and then using that so that basically we build something, and then at the end of life we can dismantle. It's dry mounted, we can dismantle, and again reuse, recycle all what we have.
And could you tell us a little bit more about Sensible City, the Sensible City Lab? Because it's sensible as in sense, not sensible.
Yeah. Sure, okay, sensible. So yeah, we spell it like sense-able, which is both, sense-able, able to sense, and sensible. But the key point is, people talk a lot about smart cities these days, and I find the name a terrible name. And it's a terrible name because smart city puts the emphasis on the technological side of things. It's about the city starts looking like a computer in open air. So our idea with sensible is, let's look at this trend behind, smart city or sensible city. This is what I mentioned before, is the convergence of digital and physical. That's real. It's really changing with data, the way we understand, design, and live in cities, as I was saying. But sensible for us was a way to put a different emphasis. How can we use technology really to create a better society? Not technology per se, as often happens with when people talk about smart cities. Yes, let's cover everything with sensors. Well, no, that's not the point. That's just e-waste pollution. But I think if we can actually use sensors in order to, for instance, reduce waste or make a city work better, be more circular and more sustainable, well, that's the goal we should aim for. And it turns out the potential for doing that is actually immense. Again, it's today is a very interesting thing. Think about how the internet changed our lives over the past 30, 40 years, where now the Internet of Things is doing the same thing to every object, every building, and in every city.
Thank you. Maybe we should go to the screen now and talk to Maria at WHO. Maria, are you there? Calling Geneva? Oh dear. She's turned into a HQ iPhone. Okay, let's just...
Is it a BT connection?
Hope not.
We'll do our best to retrieve Maria. So maybe, Monica, I should turn to you at this point. Now, you were involved in that inspiring competition that we just saw the results of theirs, and thanks for that involvement. You're helping to engage young people with the issue of e-waste, and we just heard from Dr. Goodall about how getting young people involved is so critically important for obvious reasons. The children are our future and all that stuff. I know you've got plans to expand this messaging further through your Climate Champions program. I wonder if you could tell us a bit about that program and why you've decided to get involved with these campaigns.
So the competition is just the beginning of our partnership, and we are very excited, and I can speak to it why it's so important. Generally, we have a campaign which is called Climate Champions and addresses kids. And a couple of years ago, we did research, and the research said that 95% of kids 6 to 12 know about climate crisis, know about climate change, but are incredibly anxious about it. And if you remember the message Professor Hawkins left us with, we're gonna all fail. It's quite doom and gloom. So we decided to say, okay, we're gonna tackle this anxiety by utilizing our channels and utilizing sense of humor and really convey this in a nice way. We reach incredible amount of kids. And it also transpires, it's incredibly important to onboard them really early. And because all the targets we have heard about in 27 years, who is gonna deliver those targets? Many of us, hopefully, but if we don't engage the kids, then it's really quite hopeless. And the other part is why we are really involved and excited is on the example of e-waste. Our campaign does what Professor next to me just said, but translates it to kids. Because I don't think any of the kids would really understand what we were talking about. E-waste is such a big word. E-waste is such a strange word to them. And what we want to do with Envision is to bring this in a way they understand and they engage. And then having those kids and talk about e-waste and taking about their phones, their tablets, their devices, which are integral part like air to them, getting them really inspired to recycle, that is what we want to achieve with Envision, and we want to talk about this next year, every day.
Thank you. I think we have Maria on screen, clearly not in Geneva. Welcome, Maria. Thanks for
Yes, I'm not in Geneva, I'm recycling myself.
The WHO have called e-waste a growing health threat. And what are the health challenges associated with e-waste? And what more can WHO and the health sector more generally do to reduce those risks?
As you know, we have many public healths that are of concern at the moment, but clearly the issue of electronic waste is of major concern and only growing. We see now places around the world, particularly those most vulnerable places where children, pregnant women, and very vulnerable and poor people are going into mountains of electronic waste, trying to recycle whatever it might be useful to go to the market and get $1 a day for this type of what they are recycling. And this means that they are exposed to those heavy metals contained in this electronic waste. What this represents for the health of the people? Well, many problems, particularly related to neurodevelopment, particularly related to behavioral changes as well, changes on our thyroid function, changes in our immune system, our respiratory system, and even damaging our DNA. So for us, this is a growing public health issue. Whatever can we do to reduce exposure, to recycle, to reuse, to redesign, using the creativity of the people meeting today in London and around the world, will be very important for us to reduce that exposure, and particularly the fact that we are putting at risk the brain, which is something particularly of concern. I mean, if we reduce our IQ, I think the whole society is going to suffer a lot, if not suffering already, because our IQ has been already reduced. Thank you. So these initiatives, the creativity, seeing people promoting and stimulating the youth and the creativity and making sure that we will reduce this enormous amount of electronic waste that is not recycled at the moment. We calculate that it's around 18% of the waste, the electronic waste that is produced every year, that is recycled properly. So we need to make sure that this is stopped, and therefore protecting the health of children and the most vulnerable, particularly pregnant women that might have problems as well with the unborn baby. And thank you. Over to you.
Carlo.
Somebody while hearing about this, I mentioned before the experiment we did in Seattle, but we did actually follow up looking exactly at some of these issues. We discovered places in the middle of Africa and Asia where a lot of e-waste ends up. And again, the places you were describing, Maria, where actually you got kids and family playing with it. The way we did it was actually together with an NGO in the United States. We took a large number of pieces of e-waste, and then we've been hiding trackers inside them, and then we follow them all globally around the world. And, some of those were exported legally, and some of them illegally, and we found some of those places you mentioned. I think knowing that better, knowing those flows is the first step to fix it. So we did it, we made all the data public. PBS, the national TV channel in the United States, did a documentary on that. And so this started actually a way to a big debate, and also hopefully the first step in order to close some of the loopholes. Because again, today, what happens today is that some people say, well, you can export electronics if it's still usable. But actually, if it is something that's broken, then you cannot export it. Then you can, because then that goes into a dump, perhaps an illegal place in one of the places we discover around the planet. So somehow, again, somehow electronics is a problem, but perhaps we can also try to turn some of it into the solution by better learning what's going on today and then fixing the issues and the loopholes.
Thank you. One generally for the panel. I mean, e-waste is clearly a problem, but it's also an opportunity, isn't it? I mean, you imagine the quantities of precious and rare metals that are contained within electronic waste. Is it possible to recover that, to mine landfill, or to find some other way of recovering those precious items?
I think, yeah, I'll jump in on that. There's definitely an opportunity based on it, as it was touched on there. Formally, 18% of global e-waste is recycled. Then you've got that huge swathe of, unofficially recorded activity going on. So, it's tightening up on that. It's tightening up on those e-waste flows, which are potentially going to countries which haven't got the kind of more formal capabilities of recycling that, and they're therefore probably not recovering those precious elements to the standards that, say, developed countries might. So there's the opportunity there. And there's new technology coming onto the market, moving away from traditional manual recycling, using things like biochemistry to extract some of those raw materials at higher concentrations with much lower impacts than, say, a smelter might, and then feeding those back into the supply chains. But obviously that takes time, investment and policy to drive that.
And whose responsibility is it to take action on e-waste? Is it producers? Is it consumers? Is it governments? NGOs? Who should solve this problem?
So, mentioned in the other panel, I think it's partnerships again. It's everyone within that value chain. It's you as a consumer of how you're consuming technology, and if it is broken, for example, don't just straight away get a new one. But then again, can we help through policy reduce the barriers for repair? And similarly, it's the people providing those devices. Are they doing it in a way where they're making it in a more sustainable way in terms of how they're sourcing the materials? Encouraging that secondary market for materials by driving up recycled content in their devices, which then is going to drive more people to think, actually, let's invest in that end of life supply chain to recover those materials back. So it's everyone in that supply chain. It's not it can't happen in silo.
Yeah, but I would say that somehow we need to move to a condition where everybody who's building something is going to be responsible for that all the way, to again at the beginning and then at the end when the thing is not used anymore. Now, in order to get that and get through legislation, we need public pressure. And so I think it's up to all of us, and it's up to the kids we heard before, it's up to the people, everybody can be stronger about this, to pressure on politicians so we can move to this thing. You build something, you're responsible for that. You're building something, it means you're taking a piece of the earth, and you're monetizing that for different reasons, for making a phone or something else, so you need to be responsible at the end for fixing that. That applies to many other things. It applies when you got an excavation site, when you're mining, when you got a mine, you need to fix it at the end. Well, that should apply also to everything we build and we sell.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I'll have to just ask a very quick closing question, rapid response, please. What do you think is the one thing that businesses, individuals, and policymakers can do to reduce the problem of e-waste? The number one priority?
They have to start learning and understanding it. And then it starts with the consumer, and I think everyone has a place in, a corporate world, a consumer, a producer. I think we're talking about collaboration, but we need to really understand and educate and maybe raise more awareness about the fact that this is something we can do. And that I know there's legislation, there's the government's role in it, but there is not one solution and not an immediate solution. I think we all know it. But we are in a very incredible group here talking about it. But we need to also go beyond that in a really simplistic way to make it actually easier, accessible, and understood how e-waste can be recycled and how we can stop that.
Yeah, I can agree. Building on that, I would say just really data per se can produce incredible change. A little anecdote from the first experiment we did in Seattle, again, these 3,000 pieces of trash from e-waste to banana peels, as I said, but also plastic bottles. I remember we were sharing the data with all the volunteers. I remember somebody came to us at the end and saying, well, I used to drink water in plastic bottles, throw them away, and somehow today it's out of sight, out of mind. But actually, after this person told us, those go just 5 miles from home to that landfill, and actually that changed my behavior. So data per se can be a very powerful agent of change. First of all, we can change our behavior, and second, we can put pressure on politicians, as we said before, on governments, in order to change the framework in the direction that are discussed today.
I like this very much, the fact that this hyperbolic discounting, if we don't see it and if we don't understand it and if it doesn't affect us, it's not really hot here. 2,000 kilometers away, it's really, really hot. And this affects everyone, so I completely agree. We need to understand and see it and feel it, how it really affects us and will affect us.
Yeah, I've got to agree, it's that information, most people say, let's use a phone, for example, just see a phone. They don't realise the impact that went into that. I think on average it's like 300 kilos of raw earth is mined to make a 150 gram phone, and obviously all the water and the CO2 that goes with that. If you probably painted that picture and saw that at scale, it might then make people think twice about changing their phone every 2 years or just throwing it away. So it's really that data sharing so people can make an informed decision about what they're doing.
I think I'll finish by answering my own question. That would be to say to people that next time you buy a piece of electronic equipment or choose a phone from your phone supplier, don't just get carried away with the newness of the phone. Think about what is going to happen to this phone at the end of its life. By changing consumer behaviour, we can change the way the system works. Thank you to my panellists.
Thank you very much indeed. Very well done, Graham. Battling there with the connection. We managed to get some decent comments and insights from Maria over there as well. So thank you very much indeed for that. And yeah, absolutely great point to mention there. It's about the life cycle, isn't it? And we have to think about, as Carla was saying, if we are monetizing something taken from the earth, we have to help maintain it ultimately as well. Okay. We're almost at the kind of climax of Race Against Climate Change Live. We heard from Dr. Jane Goodall earlier about the importance of engaging young people with the climate crisis. I'm about to be joined by someone with a global fan base in the millions who is doing exactly that. Let's find out exactly who it is. Okay, so let me just give him the briefest of introductions. Aidan Gallagher is an actor, musician, a UN Environment Programme Goodwill Ambassador, and in fact he was the youngest UN Goodwill Ambassador ever designated in the UN system. Aidan is passionately active in the climate movement. He uses his platform as an entertainer and a performer to share environmental messaging with a significant global audience via, of course, his social media following. And in November 2021, he started his Trees with Aidan initiative in conjunction with Envision Racing, with a goal to inspire 1 million climate action pledges, for which Envision will match up and plant 1 million trees. Let's bring it on, shall we? Please welcome Aidan Gallagher.
Hello, everyone.
Come on over. Come on over. How do you want to do this? Do you want to
good?
stand? Do you want to sit?
I have no idea.
Just come take a seat. Take a seat. How are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, yeah. Have you been at the track already? What have you been doing in the last?
Yeah, so I flew in yesterday, and then we were at the track all day yesterday.
Yeah. Excited about the weekend?
Yeah.
Envision in the mix for the titles. It's exciting. We've got this event here. Are you sensing that excitement about the weekend and about this conversation, Aidan?
I'm just waiting to see Cassidy up on that podium.
Yeah, I know, right? Let's go. I mean, it could well happen. And Envision, we know, are leading the team's championship. But let's talk about this issue here. First of all, just give us a little bit of background, if you wouldn't mind, Aidan. How and when did you first become engaged in this issue, the climate crisis, and also how did you become a UNEP Goodwill Ambassador in North America?
Right. So First of all, hi everyone. I sort of got involved around the age of 9. I initially grew up in LA and I was surfing, and I wanted to go surfing one weekend when it had rained, and my dad said that we couldn't go because of all the pollution from the land had washed down into the ocean, and you could get like an ear infection or an eye infection. So, you know, as a kid, the most you would sort of learn about or think about the environment, you know, they tell you to recycle in schools and stuff, but that was a big moment in terms of connecting what I do and realizing that it had this large implication to, you know, it's the sea, it's miles away, and it's this vast body of water, and there's so much pollution to the extent where you don't even want to go in the water because you could get like an infection. So that just seemed like a really massive thing to me, and it started the sort of thinking and the curiosity side of things. And I would Google, and around this period of time I got into social media and started getting information through that. And as I began to sort of amass a following on that, it was a very natural pivot to, well, I should be sharing this, I should repost this. So I'm very much just like a messenger of passing on information that we get from experts and trying to show it to as many people as possible. So naturally, I got in connection with the UN. I was just reposting a bunch of the information they were putting out, and I think it was 2019. I don't. Eventually, we just started working together, and they made me a UN ambassador.
Yeah.
And it's been growing from there.
Yeah, fantastic. So interesting that actually your first engagement with this was through sport, was through surfing. And I think it's one of those things that sometimes we forget. We think about, you know, the climate crisis, we think about global warming, or as it's been called in the media today and by Antonio Guterres yesterday, global boiling. But actually, it's not just the planet's a threat, it's that everything on the planet is a threat, like sport. Like the things that we love, like, you know, we saw a Formula One race earlier this year cancelled because of flooding in Italy. So it makes you realise the impact on everything on this planet, not just the planet.
Well, I try and use the term climate change as opposed to global warming because you have places getting drastically hotter and places getting cooler and weather patterns shifting. Like, it's just
extreme rain,
the balance of everything.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's exactly it. That it's the extremes. It is how things are changing more rapidly, more extremely, more frequently. Talk to us about your role with Envision Racing and how long you've been an ambassador and what sorts of work you've been up to with Envision.
Okay, so starting in 2021, as you mentioned earlier, we began to have this partnership with Envision where people can go to the Envision website and take a climate pledge. There are 12 of them, and it'll sort of walk you through all the various ways that you could reduce your impact on climate change. And in taking this free pledge, Envision will plant a mangrove tree, mostly in Madagascar, and we're up to around like 175,000 trees and growing.
All right.
So,
start.
Yeah, that's been an amazing opportunity that essentially anyone can go online, see what they might already be doing, see what else they could do, and very easily do something which is both individual and communal. You're part of all of these other people who are helping to essentially replant an entire forest. And what's so great about these mangrove trees is they're incredibly good at absorbing carbon and a bunch of other stuff like protecting ecosystems with the way the root systems work. So it's just an all-around amazing opportunity, and I'm very lucky that we're in such a partnership where we can bring this to so many people.
And connecting people with nature again, I guess that's the other thing, isn't it? We talked about that. Yes, there is the carbon emissions side of it and understanding, you know, what roles trees play and mangroves play, but also that sort of tangible side of it too. Why has this worked? How come you've got such good results? Why is it that fans out there have really responded so positively to this, do you think, Aidan?
I think just the accessibility of it. With everything I do, it probably comes from the sort of ADD, OCD parts of me, but simplicity. and generationally, the attention span gets a lot shorter. Simplicity and how it relates to somebody personally is the way in which I've seen the most sort of engagement. If someone is going about their day and they happen onto a particular movement and they're absorbing information like that flow, I'm talking about social media, their instinct is to keep going. So simplicity and how it relates to them personally, how it's going to affect them, or how they could personally take action. Anytime which it's been reduced down to its key elements, that it's a very tricky thing, because it's like you have all of these, you have a variety of environmental crises, and they're all extremely complex, and seems like this massive thing, and it's mixed up with climate anxiety. It's just, it's like a lot of
Do you suffer
things.
from that? Do you suffer from climate anxiety?
All the time.
Do you?
But it helps coming to things like
what
this.
What form does that take? Do you sort of go deep? Do you think about it a lot? Because I think that, I would say that I do. I've got 2 young children. I think that it's age agnostic, climate anxiety. It doesn't matter how old you are. Anyone can feel this. But in a way, that's a huge driver, isn't it? Because it's that fear. Can you turn it into something positive and have that accessibility, like you say?
Yeah, it's hard in that state of anxiety to flip it and use it to really drive you, because for me personally, I equate it to I see it in my head as this massive, this is what I'm having, climate anxiety. I see it as this massive tidal wave. It's this ginormous problem, and I'm this small thing. What can I do to overcome that? And, that's a very hard position to overcome and to try and even want to engage with. The inclination is to distract yourself and go somewhere else. So I have been able to get past that personally by seeing people who are much smarter than me and on the front lines of fighting the variety of crises in different ways, both with these movements in which they're involving lots of people, and then also innovation to find creative solutions around this, which makes the whole process of fighting this a lot more efficient. So, yeah, any time in which if I look to the right places, I find that I could be filled with optimism just as much as you could sort of scare yourself away. So, yeah, there's a lot of people out there who we've definitely seen at this panel who are looking at all of this complexity in the right way and know how to handle it. And it very much is a collaboration, and we're seeing that happen. So that's what's inspiring.
I was going to say that, but I think also, you were saying how it feels like this ginormous problem, but you have found your expression to try and do your bit, and everyone does their bit in different ways, and hopefully it is coherent, hopefully it is collegiate. But speaking to the audience that you do in the way that you do, and cutting through with that clarity, cutting through with that accessibility, so that it feels that you've got a direct call to action and they can do something, they feel they are making a contribution. That is, I sense, very much the way to go about this. I wonder though, not everyone does what you do, Aidan. Do you think that, what responsibility do public figures have to use their platform to drive positive change? And as I say, not everyone does it. So what are the challenges around that?
I've always found it very easy. I mean, social media is an incredibly powerful tool. Nowadays, you could, you're going about your day, you happen to pull out your phone, maybe you're at lunch and you're waiting on a friend or whatever. You're just on there, and then if you follow the right accounts, then information pops up, and with the click of a button, all of a sudden, everyone who happens to look at your feed can see the same thing that you're seeing. So it's incredibly easy to do. You can just repost. So that's a very simple way to take action. There are a lot of other ways that you can. I grew up with it, so I didn't really think about it. It's more so just the natural pivot of, wow, I didn't know this. this is going to impact me and the people that I know and people around the world who I've never met. And in a way, we're all in that together. And yet, 5 seconds ago, I had no idea that this was even happening. And so I just would see it and try and pass it on. And you can do that on like a social media level, but you can also do that just within your own social circles.
Right, exactly. So
It's always seemed like a natural thing to do, but yeah, I do think if you I very much am in this in terms of luck, that I've been someone who encountered what's going on, and then, oh my gosh, I have people who happen to see the things that I put out, so I do feel responsible in a way to help share whatever I come across that I feel is important. Greta puts it really well in this metaphor of a burning house, and I look at it that way a lot, of like, if the house is on fire and there are people who are unaware of it, they're sleeping, you'd want to wake them up, and communally, there's no other house to go to, so we got to put out the fire.
You've got to wake them up, got to put out the fire. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I often look at people like yourself, Aidan, and in my world as a sports presenter, athletes who have huge profiles, who a lot of people look up to and look to for a steer for how to lead their lives. And I think it is sometimes tricky because those athletes, those people with profile, worry about hypocrisy, worry about getting that backlash from the audience when they say they stand for something like climate action, and then the response might be, oh, hang on a minute, you fly around the world playing in all these fixtures and competing in these tournaments, etc. And so they therefore go, oh, actually, I'm going to retreat back in. So I can sense why that might be.
That's another, in addition to like simplicity in terms of messaging, I always stress that like, you don't have to be perfect. Like, don't be a saint. Just like, do something. Do what you can. Jane Goodall put it very well. That just every day make sure that you've done something. When you're in bed at the end of the night, you got to make friends with the voice in your head. I did what I could today.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, as long as you're making some step forward, you shouldn't stress it on yourself.
Well, better to do something than do nothing, right? Because otherwise, what do? We just take our ball home and then just don't play.
Well, it's like the optimism versus nihilism thing of this can be incredibly stressful, or this could be incredibly inspiring and collaborative, and something that at the end of the day I feel better about.
Yeah, and inclusive. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Everyone can get involved with this. Whatever walk of life, whatever age you are, wherever you're located.
It's very cool to come here and see such incredible panelists from all these different industries and how they're crossing over and collaborating to create these incredibly smart and just these solutions that are going to help. I'm as much here learning as I am coming.
But you're their megaphone.
I would have loved to yield my time and heard more about what they were going to say.
Well, I mean, just even simply the fact that you're helping, spread it, but you are their megaphone. And I don't know if you know this, but research from MIT shows that, unfortunately, scientists over decades have become less and less listened to or influential in society, but actually people with platforms like yourself and people in sport are more and more listened to, which makes me think, okay, so then we've got to be their megaphone. We've got to collaborate with people like...
Electric racing is a perfect way to start talking about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to close with the question that's been submitted by a fan in Brazil. Her name is Melissa Silva, and she asks this. What are the main initiatives that a teenager can take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promote adaptation to the impacts of climate change? What would you suggest for Melissa?
Well, an incredible resource at the moment, and it's one of the things which we've been trying to push really hard, is these climate pledges that you can take just on the Envision website. So there are 12 of them. They're all different. Some of them have a little bit of overlap, but it'll walk you through the different ways that you can fight climate change. And I look to that as a resource. To name a few, you can reduce meat consumption. You can look at ways of recycling e-waste, or just managing it in a way in which it's not just being thrown away, and so many other things. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there about like energy consumption and how best to use it. I'm not doing a good job here, but the Envision website...
No, you are.
It's perfectly laid out. It's incredibly simple.
But you are. Don't
in
do yourself a
addition
disservice
to it
here,
being
Aidan.
like an individual thing for free, a tree is going to be...
Again, I'll come back to it. The climate crisis is a communications crisis. We need to communicate better. We need to make it accessible. And I think that you are helping doing that. And hopefully these 12 initiatives...
I'll do what I can, as long as I can.
Fantastic. Aidan, we're going to have to leave it there, but it's been such a pleasure speaking to you. You're such an inspiring figure, and we really do appreciate you being involved in this conversation. Ladies and gents, Aidan Gallagher.
Thank you all.
Off we go. Thank you so much. I love that. This is, with real talk here, a genuine person who genuinely cares about this challenge, and it's fantastic to have Aidan here. A brilliant way to end our event today. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us here at the Science Museum, and of course to all of our speakers and our moderators for their fantastic insights. For everyone here in attendance, there is a post-event reception downstairs, some canapes, some drinks put on for you, so feel free to stick around with us for a bit. I hope that if there's just maybe one thing that you will take away from today, rapid and systemic change isn't just possible, it's absolutely essential. I think we are hearing that loud and clear, and we each have an opportunity to affect that. We're all change agents. We can all play our part in some way or another. And to echo the words that we heard from Dr. Goodall earlier, she closed with 3 simple words: together we must. Thank you, and see you again next time for Race Against Climate Change Live.